A very good afternoon, and thanks for clicking on to the Tuesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. It is the 1st of October, and in tomorrow's video, we will look at some of the stats with regards to the month of September. It looks as if it has been the wettest September for England and Wales since 1976. Some places seeing 3 times the average for the month of September in terms of rainfall. Wettest on record, I believe, for 6 counties in England. Drier than average across more northern areas of the British Isles here, and that has been the story. We've had blocking to the north and quite a lot of low pressure and exceptional rainfall further south. But let's start off today's video by looking at the 10 HPA temperature anomaly. So this is within the upper levels of the stratosphere. We continue to see a record weak polar vortex, and there is reasons, I think, behind why this vortex is unusually weak for the month of September. It is still a developing process. We are continuing to see now and through till early winter, the polar vortex is generally in a strengthening phase at this point in time. But there is unusual pressure being put on the circulation, and I believe anyway it looks very likely to be contributed to the very strong blocking within the troposphere. And if you kind of visualize a kind of mountain range within the atmosphere, and those mountains are essentially the blocking highs that we've got present over parts of northern North America, Greenland, the Ural Mountains. We're seeing some Rossby wave breaking over the North Pacific, and that is kind of creating this kind of ripple effect, enhancing the blocks that we've got in place at the moment. These are stationary blocking highs, and that is essentially creating a type of frictional effect on the stratospheric circulation. So if you kind of build the mountains up through the atmosphere, the winds that are blowing within the mid and upper levels is those mountains, those areas of high pressure are creating drag within the lower portions of the stratosphere and creating this heat flux, this bottom-up heat transfer, which then creates drag and slows down the stratospheric zonal mean winds. And that is essentially why we're seeing what's going on at the moment. This tremendous blocking within the troposphere affecting the lower stratosphere, and even all the way up into the 10 millibar level, which is the very top of the stratosphere. So we'll play through this loop off the GFS. You can see here the warming taking place. So this is looking down over the pole, North America, Greenland, Iceland, UK, Europe, and you're essentially seeing this continued warming up at the upper levels of the stratosphere, out of Siberia, across the pole, and this forcing displacement into the North America, Greenland, European side of the Arctic. And we continue to play through. You can see this constant warm anomaly showing up from Asia and towards the North Pole, and it actually intensifies as we move towards the middle portions of October. What does this actually mean going down the road? Well, it essentially reinforces the blocky pattern that we have at the moment. Weaker stratospheric polar winds means that we are going to continue to see a weaker, more amplified jet stream. And when you don't have anything to shift those blocks within the atmosphere, you're going to continue to see this process taking place. I hope you had the chance to look at the October ideas in yesterday's video, talking about the type of October that we expect to see. I think cold and wet is probably going to be the case. We may see a recovery towards the end of October, but I think that block over Greenland, south displaced jet, going to continue to see systems coming in from a southwesterly direction, but also quite frequent waves of Arctic air getting driven south. But also what's becoming more interesting is we've got the tropics becoming more active. We remain in an active phase of the Magellan Oscillation over the Atlantic Basin. We are seeing systems develop, and that those recurving cyclones releasing tropical heat out of the tropical source region up into the middle latitudes is going to create a bit of a fly in the ointment here, but there's very cross-model agreement that the Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation is going to remain anchored negative And you can see that here. The Mann-Julian Oscillation generally remains anchored in phase 1, and this is how it looks if you look at the vertical velocity pattern here. So this is off Tropical Tidbits. We've got the active wave of enhanced convection over the open Atlantic basin at the moment here, hence why we're seeing a lot of activity, especially in the eastern Atlantic basin. Let's blow this up just a little bit here to make it a little clearer. But you notice here the greens representing rising air, the oranges representing sinking air. We've got that over the East Pacific, we've got rising air over the East Atlantic, and we are seeing a lot of activity at the moment here. Isaac is now off the playing field, but we do have Tropical Storm Kirk, which is likely to become a hurricane over the next few days. We still have this threat area in the South Caribbean over the next 10% chance over the next 48 hours, and then we've got a greater threat. Disturbance to NHC has 80% chance of development over the next 48 hours. But if we click on Kirk, this is quite interesting here. It is expected to become a major hurricane and then take a turn towards the north. And some models are actually suggesting that this system continues to track north and eventually reach the UK sometime next week. So we'll look at some of the model output in just a second here. But this is becoming very interesting as we move into the month of October. Recurving tropical cyclones can reinforce blocking across the top, across the northern hemisphere. And I think things are just looking as if they're coming together quite nicely. I think that's the best way to really put it. But the Arctic Oscillation, according to the GFS ensemble, remains negative all the way out till the middle of October here. Yes, it's trending a little bit weaker in terms of negative, but nonetheless, it remains largely negative through mid-month. And the North Atlantic Oscillation of the same model here indicates the same story here, that the negative never really recovers back to positive by the time we reach the 15th of October here. So that negative Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation theme looks as if it's going to maintain itself through, at least, like I've said yesterday's video, at least through the first half of the month. And then the tropics really are something that we need to consider as well here. Looking at the 7-day tropical outlook, and you can see that that disturbance too has a 90% chance of developing here. So a very high likelihood that this system will develop. We've got Kirk still, and then we've got this threat, 40% chance, disturbance 1 moving from the Caribbean up in towards the Gulf of Mexico over the next 7 days here. So that's obviously a slightly weaker probability here. But looking at the longer range here, this is off the GFS ensemble as well, but this takes us all the way through October. And you can see here the blue line, which is the mean. I think the green line actually is the mean, sorry. But you can see here the general emphasis being on a negative Arctic Oscillation through the month of October. Looking at the North Atlantic Oscillation, same story. Looks as if there's a bit of recovery towards the end of the month. So yeah, this is the GFS 500 millibar pattern here. You can see the strong block. Let's zoom back out so you can see the full picture. This is looking down over the Northern Hemisphere, obviously. And I want to point a couple of things out to you here. Watch over the North Pacific. We've got these features here. We've got some typhoon activity, some deep areas of low pressure that is circumnavigating the North Pacific. And what they are doing here is, notice we're starting to see new wave breaks developing here over the North Pacific. Then that has downstream influence on the ridge trough sequence here. Looking here, playing through the loop. Notice here the anchored ridge over Greenland just stays put. And you've got the ridging developing over the North Pacific. We've got a deepening Aleutian low that is driving southwards. That's then just essentially forcing the heights to strengthen over Greenland here, and it just stays put, stays anchored. It goes absolutely nowhere. And then look at the trough and developing underneath here, and I would reckon we will start to develop a stronger jet stream as we start to see the remnants of ex-hurricanes moving northwards. We're going to see the gradient in terms of temperature increase as heat gets transferred north, coming up against this cold air within the upper regions of the North Atlantic. That then strengthens the jet stream, and then they're going to see areas of low pressure moving into the southern UK, into parts of France and Iberia as we move towards the middle and second half of this month here. But that block over Greenland continues to see that northerly flow on its eastern flank, driving south over the UK and Ireland, while we've got areas of low pressure, ex-hurricanes, ex-tropical systems with a lot of heat energy moving on that south displaced jet towards southwestern and western areas of Europe here. So this is a very, very interesting weather pattern developing. And when you factor in the MJO, the weak stratospheric polar vortex, it's going to kind of maintain itself through the majority of October. And then we've seen it already 30 or so days ago. September seen that wave of cold. Then we've seen another wave of cold coming a week or so ago. And it wouldn't surprise me 20-25 days later, so you're talking towards the end of October, possibly into the month of November, this pattern repeating itself. So this repeat pattern is something that I've been alluding to since the back end of summer, that might start to develop here. We've seen the switch from the positive to the negative Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation. Be interesting to see what takes place going down the road here. But like I say, this is a very, very interesting time to be interested in weather. We've got much more winter chat coming up here in the channel as well. We're going to have a new winter update coming up in the next week or so stay tuned for that. But let's have a look at the GFS overview chart here. I want to show you this real quick. It might be a little bit difficult to see, and I apologize for that, but nonetheless, I want to show you this here. So we've got this area of high pressure that kind of builds over the UK, particularly the northern half of the British Isles. We've got this system that's now exiting that brought more heavy flooding rainfall to parts of England and Wales over the last 24 hours or so. But we're keeping our eyes on these two areas of low pressure. A lot of strong blocking to the north here, if you notice. But also we've got this this wave train coming off Africa. We're seeing these systems develop. The environment is becoming more favourable. With that MJO being present over the East Atlantic Basin, we're seeing the favourability for systems developing. So we're going to see Kirk become probably a major hurricane over the next few days. But this is it, essentially, here. Over the, looks innocuous. It looks very far away from the British Isles. But watch what happens as we play through this loop. You can see the system rounding the bend. We've got the main high over the mid-Atlantic region, focused over the Azores. Notice here that we don't have a Bermuda high at the moment. We've actually got lower pressure on the west side of the subtropical Atlantic here. So the Azores high is running the show at the moment. And what's going to happen is we've got a trough associated with this low here. Remember, the jet stream is away down here because we've got the big block over Greenland, over the North Atlantic. What that's doing is creating a weakness on the western side of the Azores high, and that is essentially what looks like Kirk is going to run that weakness northwards. And if we play real quickly through the sequence, notice here that we've got this kind of large envelope of low pressure just to the west of the British Isles. That then gathers strength, it intensifies. We see the high middle and second half of this week dominating. That then gets pushed to the east. Then we've got this trough, this low, then moves in to replace that area of high pressure. And all the while, we're keeping an eye on that what would be now major Category 3 or greater Hurricane Kirk, riding the eastern side, western side of that Azores high. There's that area of low pressure then start to kind of, there's multiple areas of low pressure, but it merges into one parent low and then affects the UK. We'll see the breakdown in the high pressure over the British Isles. That low then moves in, but then all the while the GFS, this is one model run, so we obviously have to take this with a pinch of salt, but look at the pressure building over the North Atlantic and Greenland here. Area of low pressure then starts to weaken on the southern flank of the high, and then it's all eyes on Kirk. The GFS operational has this system riding around to the northern side of the Azores high, and then it starts to run towards the UK and Ireland as a potential wind event here. This is a way out to the end of next week. So obviously there's massive room for fluctuation. This system may eventually not get anywhere near the UK. It may dissipate, may go down towards Portugal. There's so many different options on the table here, especially with the heights building to the north. It may force that low to actually go south of the British Isles. But nonetheless, it would have a very potent 948 millibar low just to the southwest of Ireland towards the end of Friday next week here. We've got another system, notice here, over the central tropical Atlantic as well. And there's a baroclinic area of low pressure just to the east of Newfoundland here. So a very complex interplay between the tropics and the temperate regions coming up as the tropics become more active. We've got this big block over the north, over Greenland. Lots of interesting scenarios that are likely to unfold, and then that tropical feature actually moves towards Iberia, towards possibly France, even towards the southern UK. So this is a fascinating weather pattern. Look at this here, by the way. This would certainly be quite interesting. 970 millibar low, east of the UK, 1025 block and high to the west, north to northeasterly flow. Let's put on the 850s and check out how cold this air mass is by the time we reach the end of the month. Or the middle of the month, sorry. Look at these 850s. That's minus 10 at 850 over the majority of the UK. So this is the potential that we have coming up. And looking down the road here, there was one other thing I wanted to show here. I don't know if this is going to be the right chart, the winter overview, but it was actually showing an increase in probability of snowfall across parts of the UK towards the middle portions of this month, which would be a very fascinating scenario and situation to look at. Is this going to pull up? It looks as if it's not going to play ball with me here. Let's look at the ECMWF. So different scenarios, different models. Obviously, you would look at the ensembles, which is obviously the multi-model, average, so to speak, and that kind of is a better kind of way of looking at it, rather than looking at each individual deterministic or operational runs. You're safer looking at the ensemble here because you have a better handle on the overall sequence here. But see here, we'll play through this loop. High pressure over the UK and Ireland, keeping an eye on these two areas of low pressure, one near North America, one near the UK. They kind of tend to merge together to become a deeper area of low pressure, spinning up to the west of the UK and Ireland here. Then it makes a beeline, actually remains kind of stuck to the west. All the while, we've got a 946 Hurricane Kirk. Play through the loop here. That system eventually does kind of dumbbell its way in over the UK and Ireland as heights build to the north. And then you notice the ECMWF. Again, like I said a second or two ago, that high building over the North Atlantic and Greenland forces Kirk to then get thrown more towards Iberia as opposed to the UK and Ireland. So the GFS takes it up towards the UK, the ECM takes it towards Iberia, and these are the different options on the table, especially when you're looking so far in advance. So interesting stuff, isn't it? Let's have a look at the 850s here off the ECM for the same time frame as well. Not quite as where is it? So there you go. We're flirting with some pretty cold air due to the block across the north here. And if we look at the 850s here, by the way, real quick, let's have a look back at the GFS model and show you how the warmth getting transferred north really does start to create quite an interesting different element of scenarios. So there's the tropical systems firmly embedded within the tropical atmosphere. You've got lots of cold air getting forced pretty far south for the time of the year. You've got the warm air getting lifted north towards the British Isles in association with the area ahead of the area of low pressure itself. And then we've got colder air coming in on the backside. But then look at this here. As Kirk then lifts north, meets the jet stream, we see that gradient really tighten up. And then we've got all sorts of different scenarios unfolding here. But this is a complex but very interesting weather pattern as we move through the month of October. So negative Arctic oscillation, negative North Atlantic oscillation, favourable MJO at the moment here. We've got a record week polar vortex at the moment due to the strong blocking within the troposphere. Many reasons to stick around here in the channel, and I hope that you can hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Hit the like button as well. Let myself and YouTube know that you're enjoying the content, and leave a comment as well. It would be great to hear from you. So stay tuned. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. I'll see you next time with more. Bye for now.